Wow. Okay. Um, this is pretty wild stuff, honestly. Thanks for sending this in to us. You've really uncovered something fascinating here. This mysterious fog. We've got firsthand accounts, lab results, even some theories that sound like they're straight out of the X-Files. But hold on, before we dive headfirst into this fog, I got to remind everyone watching, hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to share with your friends. Every share helps us grow and keeps these deep dives going.
Okay.
Okay, so you've been looking into these reports of a strange fog showing up all over the place, right? And it seems to be leaving behind some pretty bizarre residue. And even more concerning, it seems to be happening at the same time that a lot of people are getting sick.
Yeah, the first thing that jumps out is just how widespread this is.
Right.
We're not talking about just one town or one city. This fog is popping up everywhere. Your research shows it in Florida, Atlanta, South Africa, Canada, even the UK. And the way people are describing this fog, it's not your average fog. It's unusually thick, doesn't have that normal earthy smell. And instead, people are saying it smells like chemicals.
Yeah, that's definitely not your typical morning mist.
Right, and then there's the stuff this fog leaves behind. You found reports of a crystalline substance covering walkways. People are describing it as plasticky and geode-like. Some people even found this powdery stuff on their cars that turned into a paste. But the thing that really caught my attention was the hair-like growth on cat food, of all things.
That's gotta be one of the weirdest parts of this whole thing, right?
Mhm.
It makes you wonder, is the fog carrying this stuff, or is it somehow making these weird growths happen? But before we get too deep into that, I think we need to talk about the big thing here. The reports of all these people getting sick, it seems to be connected to this fog.
Right, because it's not just a few sniffles here and there. You've gathered all these stories from people who are experiencing all kinds of symptoms. Diarrhea, sore throats, these coughs that just won't go away, and congestion. And it looks like these illnesses are lasting way longer than a normal cold or flu. That part is really worrisome, especially when you consider what you found about the number of flu cases going way up. A 12% jump. And it happened right when this fog thing started showing up. And then there are all those empty shelves at the drugstore. No cold and flu medicine, that Canadian guy you mentioned who couldn't find any medicine. It really shows you just how many people are getting sick.
Okay, so we've got this mystery fog, this strange residue, and this huge increase in illnesses. Is there any real proof that these things are connected?
Here's where things get really interesting. One of your sources, a person from Florida, actually had the fog tested, and the lab results, they found Serratia marcescens. It's a bacteria that can also act as a parasite.
Serratia marcescens.
Oh.
Okay, I'm going to need a little help understanding that one. What is that exactly, and could that be causing the symptoms people are reporting?
Serratia marcescens is known to cause a bunch of different infections. And the interesting thing is, those infections, they often match up with the symptoms you've been looking at. Urinary tract infections, respiratory problems like pneumonia, and even bloodstream infections in really bad cases. And here's the kicker, it can spread through the air.
Hold on, you're saying this bacteria, the one that can cause all those illnesses, it's literally floating around in this fog. That seems like a pretty strong link.
It's definitely a big piece of the puzzle, and when you look at the specific illnesses people are describing, urinary tract problems, those lingering coughs, it could even be pneumonia. The lab results, they start to paint a pretty clear picture.
Okay, this is definitely making me rethink my plans to go hiking in the fog this weekend. But before we freak out completely, let's look at some of the theories you found. Some of them are a little out there.
Oh yeah, for sure. We've got theories about people releasing pathogens on purpose, basically biowarfare.
Yeah.
And then there are connections to HMPV outbreaks. And of course, no good mystery is complete without some talk about aliens.
Aliens, huh? I'm always down for a good conspiracy theory. But let's stick to what we can actually learn from your research. We'll save the alien debate for another time. So I'm curious, given how widespread this fog is, are any of these theories even possible?
Well, let's take a closer look at those theories one by one.
Yeah.
Using the evidence you've gathered, okay?
Yeah.
Like the biowarfare idea, it's a scary thought for sure.
Yeah.
But you found that this fog, it's happening all over the world. A targeted attack like that would probably be limited to a much smaller area, wouldn't it?
Yeah, good point. And wouldn't a deliberate release of something like Serratia marcescens cause much more severe symptoms right away? The illnesses you've documented, it seems like they're developing more slowly. And the severity is all over the place.
Exactly. So while we can't totally rule out the possibility that someone is doing this on purpose, it just doesn't really match up with what we're seeing in your research. What about the HMPV connection? You pointed out a few articles that mention a possible link there.
Yeah, it looks like there's some overlap in the timelines of the HMPV outbreaks and this fog showing up. But the articles I found, they mostly talked about respiratory symptoms. Your analysis of Serratia marcescens, it suggests that there could be a whole range of problems.
You're right, HMPV. It mainly affects the respiratory system, while Serratia marcescens can cause problems in other parts of the body too. That being said, it's possible that this fog is carrying more than one pathogen. Maybe HMPV is in there too. That could explain why people are reporting so many different symptoms.
Okay, so maybe the fog isn't the cause of the problem itself, but it's like a delivery system for whatever's out there. That's a pretty unsettling thought. But let's go back to that weird residue you mentioned before, the crystalline formations, the powdery paste. Is there any chance that Serratia marcescens could be causing that too?
It's not impossible, but to say for sure that those residues are connected to Serratia marcescens, we need to do more research. We need to test samples of the residue itself and see if we can find any traces of the bacteria.
I see. So we can't definitively link everything to this bacteria just yet. But the timing of all this is just too weird to ignore. It's like this fog comes rolling in leaves behind all this strange stuff, and then people start getting sick.
You've hit on something important here. It's that trail of breadcrumbs. That's what makes this so interesting. And for me, the thing I can't figure out is the hair-like growth. You said it was found on cat food specifically. Have you found any other reports of it growing on other types of food or surfaces?
That's the weird part. The sources I found only mention cat food. It's almost like this growth. It really likes cat food for some reason. It makes you wonder, is there something special about cat food that could be attracting this growth? Or maybe triggering it somehow?
Now that is a fascinating question. It's almost like this fog or whatever it's carrying. It's interacting with the stuff in cat food specifically and causing this bizarre growth. That's definitely something worth looking into. It really shows you how much we still don't understand about what's going on here.
Okay, let's shift gears for a second and talk about those alien theories. I know we want to stick to the evidence, but I gotta admit, the idea of this fog being some kind of message from aliens, it's pretty captivating.
It definitely gets your imagination going, right? And while it's important to be skeptical about these theories, there's a part of me that wonders, what if?
Right, what if this fog is some kind of signal or something we just don't have the ability to understand yet?
It reminds you that there's still so much we don't know about the universe, and that what we think is possible is always changing.
Okay, before we get too lost in space, let's come back down to Earth and recap what we know so far. What are the key takeaways from all this research you've done on this fog? Just because make sure I've got this right. We're dealing with this fog. It's happening all over the world. And it got some really strange qualities. It leaves behind this weird residue. Some of it seems to really like cat food, and it could be carrying as bacteria, Serratia marcescens. Plus, there's a chance it could be spreading other pathogens too.
You got it. And even though we've talked about some interesting theories, the truth is there's still a lot we just don't know about this fog and where it came from. But we can focus on what we do know and use that information to stay safe and informed.
That's a good point. Being informed is definitely a good thing, especially when you're dealing with something as unpredictable as this. So let's talk about what people can do to protect themselves if they run into this fog or if they start experiencing any of these weird symptoms.
Well, first things first, good hygiene is super important. Wash your hands a lot, especially after being outside. And try not to touch your face. It might sound simple, but it's one of the best ways to stop infections from spreading.
Right. All that stuff our parents used to tell us. What about face masks? Would those help protect against this fog and whatever it might be carrying?
Definitely. If you're worried about breathing in particles or pathogens, wearing a mask, especially in crowded places or places with bad ventilation, it could give you an extra layer of protection.
That makes sense. And I bet people who already have breathing problems would definitely want to think about wearing a mask. Now, what about those other weird symptoms, the ones that could be connected to Serratia marcescens? What should people do if they start experiencing those?
It's always better to be safe than sorry. If you're experiencing anything strange or something that just won't go away, especially after you might have been exposed to this fog, go see a doctor.
Good advice. Don't wait to get checked out. And if you tell your doctor about the fog and the possibility of Serratia marcescens, it might help them figure out what's wrong and how to treat it. So we've talked about hygiene masks and seeing a doctor. Any other tips for staying safe?
Staying informed is really important. Keep up with the local news and any health advisories of updates or recommendations for your area. And don't underestimate the power of just paying attention. Notice what's going on around you, any unusual changes in the environment, and share that information with others. You never know. You might help someone figure out what's going on with this whole thing.
That's a great point. We can all be like citizen scientists in a way.
Yeah.
Just by observing and sharing what we see. Okay, let's take a step back for a minute and look at the bigger picture. This whole situation, this global fog and the potential health risks. What does it tell us about our world and how everything is connected?
It's a powerful reminder that we're all part of this delicate system. And what happens in one place can affect the whole world. This fog, no matter where it came from. It shows how things in the environment, air quality, weather patterns, even things that seem isolated, they can directly impact our health.
It really makes you think about how important it is to protect our environment and be aware of how we affect the planet. After all, we're not just breathing the same air, we're all sharing this one planet.
In this situation, it emphasizes how important it is to keep researching and monitoring these kinds of events. The more we understand about how our environment affects our health, the better we'll be able to protect ourselves and future generations.
Well said. And a huge thank you to you, our listener, for sharing this incredible and kind of creepy topic with us. Your research has given us a lot to think about, and hopefully it's helped others to stay informed and take precautions.
Absolutely. It's because of curious and observant people like our listener that we can all learn and grow together.
And to everyone watching, we want to hear from you. Have you noticed anything unusual with the fog or air quality in your area? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We might even feature your story in a future deep dive. And remember, the more we share and learn from each other, the better prepared we'll be to face whatever mysteries our world throws at us. Now, before we go, I want to remind you how important your support is to this channel. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share it with your friends. Your support helps us grow and lets us keep bringing you these deep dives into the fascinating and sometimes strange corners of our world.
Stay curious, stay informed, and stay healthy.
And that's a wrap for this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into the unknown.